This program has been paid for by the sponsor and does not reflect the views of PCN.
Good afternoon, and welcome to PHRC Speaks Fair Housing Forward. I'm your host, Brittany Mellinger, and I serve as the Fair Housing Training and Outreach Coordinator at the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. In this show, we explore all things housing with the experts, advocates, and community leaders who are working to expand access to housing. Today, we'll be speaking with PHRC's Director of Fair Housing and Commercial Property about advancing housing opportunities throughout Pennsylvania. It's my pleasure to welcome to the show my colleague, Caroline Eister. She leads the development, implementation, and monitoring of statewide programs aimed at preventing discrimination in housing and commercial property. Eister has served in various roles in state government in Pennsylvania, including in the Office of Developmental Programs, Office of Mental Health and Substance Abuse, and the Office of Administration's Bureau of Equal Opportunity, as well as a Human Relations Representative or Investigator in PHRC's Harrisburg Regional Office. Prior to her Commonwealth service and throughout her career, Eister dedicated many years to supporting people with disabilities and the elderly. She focused particularly on training, development, and coordination for community living arrangements, intermediate care facilities, long-term care facilities, and home-based waiver programs throughout Pennsylvania. Eister developed impactful training programs in disability rights, abuse prevention, crisis intervention, principles of investigation, as well as healthcare and safety presentations, clinicals, and practicums for community members, state agencies, students, and professionals. Eister's return to PHRC in 2023 reflects her ongoing dedication to advancing fair housing and advocating for the rights of all Pennsylvanians. She has served as chairwoman of various human and disability rights committees, demonstrating her commitment to advocating for equality and inclusion. Her personal passion for social justice provides support for positive change and empowerment in communities across the state. Welcome, Director Eister, and thank you for joining us this afternoon.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, Brittany.
Absolutely. So we all have a story on how we got to our current work and vocation. I'd like to start our conversation today by inviting you to share a little bit about your journey to your current role.
Well, and thank you again for that introduction. That was very wonderful. And just to revisit that a little bit, I came to the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission through, most recently, the Bureau of Equal Opportunity. Prior to that, I worked with the Office of Developmental Programs and also the Office of Mental Health and Substance Abuse under the Department of Human Services. I started with the Commonwealth back in 2007.
Oh, wonderful. So you've been in your current role for about a year and a half at PHRC. Can you share with us some of the biggest disparities that you've seen in terms of housing opportunities?
We see significant disparities in homeownership rates among racial and ethnic groups. Despite the Fair Housing Act being enacted over 60 years ago, these gaps have not significantly narrowed. The barriers include systemic discrimination, limited access to credit, lower wealth accumulation in marginalized communities, and lack of affordable housing options.
Yeah, absolutely. So in about 2 years ago, in 2023, PHRC released a white paper which detailed some of the urgent housing barriers and needs that are facing Pennsylvanians. It highlighted the need for additional housing affordability, particularly in areas of opportunity. And it also discussed some real barriers in accessing housing through the assistance programs that are designed to serve the most vulnerable Pennsylvanians. It shared some statistics about housing discrimination in our state. So in the 2 years since we've published that, what can you tell us about what's kind of stayed the same and what's changed since then? And what are PHRC's next steps to continue to address this issue?
To address the disparities, we need comprehensive investments in affordable housing, financial literacy programs, and initiatives that support first-time homebuyers, particularly in underserved communities. Additionally, we must advocate for policies that promote equitable development.
So sometimes the fair housing issues that come up can be pretty technical on how they can impact protected classes throughout Pennsylvania. we're talking about the white paper. What's the main takeaway that you would want people to know about housing needs throughout Pennsylvania?
Okay, well, since our release of our white paper in 2023, we have seen increased awareness around housing needs, but systemic barriers remain largely unchanged. PHRC's next steps include advocating for policy change, increasing outreach to the vulnerable populations, and collaborating with local agencies to improve access to housing assistance. We are looking to update our white paper, and our goal is to have updates to our action steps by mid-summer this year. So hopefully everyone, it seems that we have a lot of interest in the updates from our partners and our intergovernmental partners as well. So that will be something people are on the lookout for.
Yeah, absolutely. And those updates would include some more recent data, as well as some updates on some of the trends that we're seeing and the next steps that PHRC is going to be taking in the years to come, right?
Exactly. Not only will we be updating our action steps that were core to the white paper, the updates will include areas of concern and interest that we're seeing in the current climate as well.
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit more about the investments that we need to make in our housing to make sure that folks have actual housing opportunities?
Absolutely. Investment should focus on creating and preserving affordable housing units, increasing access to homeownership programs, and supporting community development initiatives. We also need to enhance rental assistance programs and provide resources for housing counseling.
Yeah, absolutely. And having these resources and these programs and these investments in place really help us to support individuals in being able to access the housing of their choice, providing them that access and that opportunity.
Yes.
So I'd like to talk next about zoning, because that comes up a lot in our conversations at both the state and the national level. And it poses a real barrier for communities being able to meet the needs of their residents. Could you share with our audience a little bit about how zoning laws can impact housing opportunities and the extent to which they can contribute to discriminatory practices and structures?
Yes, there are notable gaps in the understanding how local policies affect housing access, particularly around zoning laws and their implications for affordability. We need to focus we need to focus resources on educating stakeholders about the intersection of housing policy, economic development, and social equity.
So I know your work involves engaging with a lot of different stakeholders, both at the national level, state level, as well as in local communities. As you're engaging in these conversations, where do you find that the gaps in people's knowledge? Where do you think we need to have a greater focus on our resources in education and training?
Great. Well, there are notable gaps in understanding how local policies affect housing access, particularly around zoning laws. And their implications for affordability as well. We need to focus our resources on educating stakeholders about the intersection of housing policy, economic development, and social equity.
Yeah, absolutely. And how can we better involve the expertise of those with lived experience in housing instability and discrimination to inform our policy decisions? You know, they've actually lived through it, and they've gone through it and can speak to the experience and to some of the barriers with programs. How do we include those voices in a meaningful way?
The best to speak upon it. So to better inform policy decisions, we must actively involve individuals with lived experience of housing instability and discrimination. Their insights are invaluable in shaping policies that truly reflect the needs of our communities. This can be done through community forums, advisory boards, and partnerships with grassroots organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. And PHRC is building those out through our advisory councils, our social justice ambassador programs, and other programs to reach local communities as well. Do you want to share anything about those programs as well for our viewers that might be interested?
In joining an advisory council in your area, you can contact PHRC to find out if there is an existing advisory council in your area, or also we initiate advisory councils where we have groups of interested individuals. Also, our goal is to have a social justice ambassador in every single county. So that is someone who also works in the role, gives advice, and brings the concerns of their specific community to the PHRC.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know something that you've been very involved with in your time at PHRC has been the use of AI and algorithmic screening in housing situations. So when a tenant would apply for housing and would receive a screening based on data provided from an algorithm, what can you tell us about these screenings and how they can impact housing opportunities?
Thank you. Yes, emerging technologies like AI can unintentionally perpetuate biases in tenant screening processes. To spot discriminatory practices, applicants should be aware of their rights and request transparency in how decisions are made. And if someone believes they are facing unfair screening, they should document the process and notify their housing authority and, of course, the PHRC.
Yeah, absolutely. So there have been numerous changes lately at the federal level in terms of fair housing enforcement. Is there anything that you want Pennsylvanians to know about their protections against discrimination in the state of Pennsylvania?
Yes, with recent federal changes in fair housing enforcement, it's essential for Pennsylvanians to know that their rights under the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act, the PHRA. This law protects individuals from discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin, and many other protected classes in Pennsylvania, including familial status, disability. That's among our categories as well. So our protections and our laws are in place in the state of Pennsylvania. And in light of the federal changes, Pennsylvania still have protection under the PHRA, and you find that help at the PHRC.
Yeah, and how can people reach out to the PHRC if they wanted to learn more about their protections and their rights?
Well, we have a fair housing hotline that you can access. There are resources available on our website. They can call the PHRC and they can file a complaint, or if they're not sure if they're facing discrimination, they can call and talk to one of our staff in our Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, or our Philadelphia office, but you do not have to reach out to that specific geographic area. We will definitely field the call to where it goes and the complaint to where it goes. You can just reach out to us via those modalities.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, lots of ways to get in touch with us. So you mentioned the PHRA, the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act, which forms the basis for our protections in Pennsylvania. But we know that there are other states that have different laws and different protections, and we engage with and learn from those other commissions and agencies in other states that do similar work to the PHRC. So looking at protections in other states' laws, is there anything needed in the PHRA to further protect Pennsylvanians in their housing and to address discrimination in our state?
Sure. Well, while the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act provides a solid foundation, we should examine potential enhancements to better protect against discrimination. Recently, the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission expanded protections for LGBTQ plus individuals. And by expanding our definition of sex to include a variety of interest and for people LGBTQ plus. We also are looking into addressing source of income protections and sealing of eviction records, in addition to our existing protections.
Yeah, for our viewers that might not be familiar with source of income protections, could you give us a basic description of what those are?
Sure, that would be if you receive funding from perhaps Section 8 program, or you receive federal funding from another source, your housing provider cannot dictate that they won't take that for income when you're applying or living in housing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so crucial because folks have a variety of supports and sources of income that they can use to live stable lives and to access housing communities of their choice. So it's really important that that's not a barrier to folks.
Right.
You also mentioned the ceiling of evictions as a crucial policy to enhance our protections in Pennsylvania. Can you talk a little bit about why that's important?
Absolutely. Because someone can have an eviction on their record and perhaps they were never even evicted. All it takes is for the charge to be filed, the eviction to be filed, and there's no law or no rule in Pennsylvania right now about how far that we could go back. There's no rule about when they should be taken off. You could win a case. Your housing provider can file an eviction against you, and you could win the case, but it still stays with you. And that does affect people's ability to move forward when they're seeking housing or to secure that for their families for an untold amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. It pops up on that tenant screening when someone goes to try to find a new home for themselves or their family, and you're right. It can stay on someone's record even if there was no judgment filed against them, even if the case was thrown out completely and didn't have merit. So I agree. I think that is something that would provide additional protections for Pennsylvanians to be able to make sure that folks have equal access to housing. So I know a lot of our viewers may be watching this program who might not be decision makers in housing. They might not be a landlord or a property owner, a realtor, a zoning official, or a local commissioner. They might not have received PHRC fair housing training. How can just regular community members become involved in the efforts for housing justice?
Well, even if you're not a decision maker, there's many ways you can become involved in the fight for fair housing justice. You can participate in community meetings, advocate for policy changes, volunteer with local organizations, educate yourself and others about housing rights and housing issues.
So we talked a little bit about how someone can reach out to PHRC if they've got concerns and if they wanted to file a complaint. But what could they expect after that initial reach out? What does that complaint process look like for someone that believes they've experienced housing discrimination?
Oh, no, thank you. Yes, I like to demystify that for anyone who may think that, well, is it really discrimination? Is this going to amount to anything? Or there may be fear around filing a complaint.
Yeah, there can be a lot of questions as someone's trying to consider their next steps. So what do you think they should know and they should consider?
So with your initial reach out, your concerns are important. So it's not a matter of deciding for yourself if it's discrimination or not. We're happy to help you make that determination. So I would suggest that people do not hold back, that if there is any question at all, it's absolutely no problem for them to reach out, and we're happy to help with that, and that's why we're here. So when someone reaches out, they would be sent to the intake department. So someone in intake would have them fill out a questionnaire. They would go over the questionnaire in person with dates, times, what they felt they experienced, and what they felt was unfair about it. If it's jurisdictional and if it's appropriate, that complaint will be sent over to an investigator. An investigator is assigned, and they will reach out to what now is the complainant. So they draft a legally sufficient and formal complaint for the complainant. And they send that to the respondent, or that is the person that the complainant is filing against. That respondent has 30 days to answer, and we call it an answer. So they can get an attorney, or they could answer that complaint themselves. That's a question that a lot of people have. Do they need an attorney to file the PHRC? And the answer is they do not need to have an attorney. Our services are free of charge, and that investigator stays with you, hopefully through the entire process. Not to say that sometimes there is changeover. We limit that as much as possible. There's no set answer to how long someone's complaint, somebody's investigation might take. It's divided into counts, and sometimes, depending on the circumstances, there's a lot of interviews that need to be done. Evidence is collected. So there's no set point, time point that we aim for. We do thorough and integral investigations, and that's our focus. If we do not receive an answer, if providing the respondent did not ask for an extension, there's up to 30-day extension. It doesn't necessarily have to be granted for 30 days, but with good reason, we can grant that. If that answer is still not received, we would file a rule to show cause, and we do at the Pennsylvania Relations Commission. We are an enforcement agency with police powers, so we would seek a subpoena for those records. At any point, we do try to mediate. We mediate a great deal of cases. We're very proud of our mediation, which I believe they were featured here a few weeks ago. Yeah. We have a robust mediation division, and we try to have our cases, when possible, mediated. But at the end of the investigation, there's two possible endings. There's a no probable cause or probable cause. So NPC is a no probable cause finding, and a letter is sent to all parties explaining that the no probable cause. If it's probable cause, it could end in conciliation, adjudication, or be placed for public hearing, or end up in Commonwealth Court. So
right, because probable cause means that there was enough evidence to determine that discrimination occurred, right?
Yes, at that point, at that point, we know that discrimination did in fact occur.
Yeah, well, thank you for taking us through the process, so that way folks know what they can expect. You know, sometimes when you go into a governmental agency, you don't necessarily know what the process and what to expect and some of the terminology. So thank you for explaining that to our viewers.
Oh, you're welcome.
So I know that this work isn't easy, hearing about the housing needs of Pennsylvanians day in and day out, and dealing with discrimination complaints. Can you share a little bit about what keeps you going on the hard days and what motivates you to do this work?
Oh, thank you. As we know, we do have hard days. We see a lot of sad cases sometimes that can wear on people who do this work. So for me, on hard days, I remind myself why this work is so vital. Every step we take towards equitable housing opportunities is a step towards justice and dignity for all. I like to think of our children, our generations our generation leaving behind a better situation for generations to come, and to really work towards not making the same mistakes and missteps that were made in the past. So,
yeah, absolutely. And we know how quality housing can impact generations to come as well. You know, having a safe, stable place to live, living in a place where you can get a quality education that can impact your kids' futures. So I think that's really meaningful.
Thank you. Yes, it affects everything. Your quality of housing affects every aspect of one's life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dr. Eister, thank you for taking the time to come on the show this afternoon. We're really grateful for your leadership in advancing fair housing throughout Pennsylvania. I'd also like to thank our viewers for spending their afternoon learning with us. So if you believe that you've experienced housing discrimination or would like to learn more about housing protections in Pennsylvania, give us a call at PHRC's Fair Housing Line, which is 855-866-5718. You can also find us on our website on the screen, which is www.pa.gov/en/agencies/PHRC. You can also keep up with our work on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And remember, our communities are stronger when everyone has a place to call home. We'll see you next time.
This program has been paid for by the sponsor and does not reflect the views of PCN.